No.
Right.
One.
Good morning. Oh, good morning. Ah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We had to make a run to get a key to get in, so we are starting late. So apologies for that. And welcome to the special meeting of the Planning Commission for Scio Township, October 26th. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under goddesses.
All right, roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Moore,
Present.
Commissioner Chang here, Commissioner Hewlett,
Present.
Commissioner Reiser,
Present.
and Commissioner Culbertson.
Present. Thank you. And I did hear from Commissioner Hyde that he had a conflict with this evening. So thank you all for doing 2 meetings in 1 week. Yahoo! All right, adoption of the agenda. Any revisions to our agenda this evening?
Move adoption of the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Moore, support by Commissioner Reiser. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, with that, we'll open public comment. Any people wishing to address the Planning Commission on any matters? Such oral presentations shall be limited to 3 minutes unless you're a representative or a spokesperson for an organization, and you shall have 5 minutes. Opening public comment at 7:09. There is no one in Township Hall. Is there anyone online?
Yes, Pam Boyd has her hand up, so Ms. Boyd, you have the floor.
Thank you. Could you please start having public comment at the end? Especially if we try to keep it short in the beginning. It seems to me that there tend to be catch-all at the end in a lot of these meetings. And that's my public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will wait a moment. Jonathan has his hand up. Jonathan, you have the floor.
Hey, good evening. Just want to second that vote for having comment at the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give it a half second here. And no other hands are up.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Reiser, supported by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're closing public comment at 7:10. Thank you for the 2 people that are online. All right, communications and correspondence. Has anyone had any additional communications or correspondence? No. All right. We have no public hearings, so we're moving on to our new business. This is discussion only. Our Jackson Road Sub-Area Advisory Group work schedule and outcomes, and we'll turn that over to Mr. Luan.
All right, I'm gonna move, since there's nobody in the audience.
Sounds good.
Are we to read it as group A or group space?
Group
A
review. Yes.
Okay.
I think sometimes when they do the upload, it takes something, a space or whatever, and creates a different character.
So while Mr. Luan is getting his papers together,
Yes.
I know I had said a couple days ago that I wouldn't have the time to serve on that group. And so after reading this, Mr. Luan's memo, his exceedingly organized way of approaching this, I think I can do it. I just have so many subcommittees and things going on. I was afraid that I wouldn't have the space to, focus on it. So, but I think it'll be okay.
All right.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. It's good to sit with you like we used to do before COVID. And sit with the commission. So tonight I'd like to go over kind of although it is pretty detailed, as Commissioner Moore had mentioned, I'd like to go over what I'm calling kind of the scope and kind of charge and schedule for the Jackson Road Corridor Advisory Group folks. We've been talking about this group for, I think, a few meetings. And I'd like to get your input. These are kind of some of my thoughts on how we can organize this group. Broadly, I was thinking of a group that consists of, and we'll get into what if you guys all agree with the composition that I'm recommending here. But a combination of Planning Commission, Township Board, DDA members. There could be others. If you guys think there could be another group involved in that, I'm certainly open to that. And in that group, having a relatively limited scope so that, I don't want anyone to think that this is a group that's going to go on for the next year. This is something we want to get some good input from this kind of multi-disciplinary, I guess, group with, they all have slightly different thoughts and ideas on things, and then bring those ideas back to the Planning Commission. And then at that point, we would do our kind of typical ordinance writing, that we would do for a new ordinance, depending on the scope of that ordinance, whether that's, that could be anything from a simple amendment to JRAD to throwing out JRAD and starting all over with home-based code or something like that. So that's kind of the big picture. And I guess I'd first like to, the other thing is that, we intend, once I get the Planning Commission's input tonight, I plan to kind of rewrite this memo and send it to the Township Board, along with a cost estimate of doing this proposal. There was, I think, some questions about that, about who's the body that's actually approving this effort. And I think the Township Board, from what I hear, wants to be the body that would actually approve this effort. And so tonight I wanted to put this in front of the Planning Commission. I think it's appropriate that you guys are the body that puts together some of these big picture ideas before we submit them to the Township Board. So that's where I'm at. Jan, I know Jan helped me a little bit with this outline. So Kim, it's not just me. Jan helped with this also.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Definitely. I have something jumped out when I was reviewing your memo.
Yep.
The makeup and scope, it's even numbered, but as my initial thought was that it needed to be an odd number because we had to make decisions and take a vote, but it doesn't, the way you're describing it does not sound like we'll be voting.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a
Okay.
voting situation. Although I thought of that also, but I mean, if you could do 3 planning commissioners, 2 board, 2 DD, I mean, it's really, if you want an odd number, we can do an odd number, but if we're not like, this group's not gonna be voting on ordinance language. Just kind of helping direct. This is one of those kind of cases where, we sometimes get maybe in the planning world, and especially my world as a consultant, we sometimes get a little ahead of ourselves and just start writing an ordinance and throw it on your desk. And then I've heard in the past, not necessarily here, but I've been doing this in a lot of different communities, a lot of different, over quite a amount of time. It's like, wow, that's a great ordinance, but did you check with DDA? Did you check with the board? Did you check with the planning? Is this kind of the direction you want to go? So I feel pretty confident I could just start writing an ordinance, but I think this is probably a better approach is to get input from all you and in this body. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And Jen, did you say it? You're good?
Yeah, no, I think that's important because, obviously the DDA and the Board of Trustees are key stakeholders to updating this and as our discussions with the PUD, it is even though it's been sort of a gradual change, it is a significant change that will have, if as we started doing, the goals kind of, higher density multifamily, that type of thing, will affect multiple things in the township, including, maybe opening up the sewer capacity negotiations and things like that. So, and I think, certainly the businesses that are in the DDA, this affects all of them because depending what happens with the ordinance, there may be more non-conforming buildings, et cetera. So, how we, look at this vision for the future, it's also how we get there, and it's important to get, some of the stakeholders early on.
Yeah, this issue of the non-conforming properties, how does that affect things? I mean, we already have non-conforming properties vis-a-vis the zoning ordinance, but how does that stop us, hinder us, or in our planning? Because we make them non-conforming by
Yeah.
changing the statute or the
Yes.
ordinance?
Yes.
I see.
Yep, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a moment here. So I'd like to start by, before we get into, you've got some goals I've laid out here. And as we get into this subcommittee, those goals, I'll probably get some ideas that those goals should be more broad or less broad, or and add and subtract from that. But this is kind of a starting point that Jan and I had with the goals for the group. But before we get into that, I want to hand out something. I don't know, I kind of like to look back a little bit before we move forward. And or if not, sure, you guys can share.
We can share.
Yeah, I can share with John too.
I'll share with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Must have left some on the copier. So again, I kind of like to start, before we start talking about goals, and if you kind of think we're on the right track for these goals, I'd like to kind of start with some of the strategies and the kind of goal statements that are contained in the current master plan. So the current master plan adopted in 2021 talks about the Jackson Road sub area in the master plan. So this is always a good place to start, as in your current master plan. And it talks about a number, like 11, we call them development strategies. I would say the first 6 or so of those strategies are what I would consider to be kind of maybe the holdover strategies from previous master plans, because it talks about the corridor being a commercial, retail, infill commercial area with office, industrial, and research between Stabler and Wagner. It talks about supporting office, industrial, and research uses between Parker and Stabler. Fosters the development of corporate high-tech job nodes while accommodating existing and new civic and governmental uses. Promotes highway commercial uses, especially service uses, supporting future businesses in proximity to I-94. Encourages office, industrial, research on Baker. Encourages high-density residential and commercial uses as part of overall mixed-use development proposals. And then when we get to 7, I believe these were some of the new strategies that were added in 2021. In addition to the uses depicted in Figure 3, the sub-area may consider multifamily residential when reviewed as part of overall PUD proposal. Multifamily residential shall be limited to current capacity of the sewer service district. Multifamily mixed use and or standalone development shall be considered where sanitary sewer capacity is available in excess of that available to the underlying planned zoning property. Number 8, promote public transportation along Jackson Road. Number 9, promote walkability, the establishment of linkages from existing non-motorized pathways to other areas of the township. 10, to protect natural features associated with Mill Creek and Honey Creek and other natural feature issues. And number 11, consider developing form-based guidelines within the sub-area.
And just for the record, I know that you're reading from something you printed out, but for the benefit of those who are following online on Zoom, or even in our office, in the hall, if you have your computer, you're on page 66, of the master plan, which is available on the township's website. So
Correct.
page 66 of master plan, Jonathan and Pam, if you want to follow along.
Yep. And then the design guidelines go through some various ideas that we should try to promote within the corridor. So I wanted to mention that first before we got into some additional goals or development strategies for the corridor. I think I mentioned this a while ago to the planning commission that I think the current master plan, particularly development strategies 7, 8, 9, and 7 through 11, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, really support what I've been hearing about the corridor. So there was some discussion early on that maybe we needed to amend the master plan first. And I don't think we need to amend the master plan. I think there's already enough general language in there to that we can connect any kind of new ordinance with the planning documents that we already have in hand.
Is that because 7 talks about multifamily residential and PUDs?
Yeah.
And multifamily with respect to the sewer capacity and public transportation and walkability and all the things we've been kind of talking about lately.
Yep, and then particularly even it goes as far on development strategy 11 to talk about developing form-based guidelines within the sub-area. So I think we always want your master plan to have some connection to the zoning that you're doing within the community. And so if you're ever challenged, attorneys will try to say that if you don't have this linkage, they'll try to say that your standards are arbitrary and you're just coming up with stuff and it's not based on anything. Well, I feel pretty solid that our current master plan at least begins to talk about these things. So I wanted to mention that. I think it's important to kind of start there.
Yeah, and I also want to say, if you go further into the design guidelines, you also have like under 7, promote water conservation and reuse, electrification of building and transportation systems, net zero energy ready buildings, on-site renewable power generation, and reduction of embodied carbon. So I think there are, even with those guidelines, there's a good foundation for what we're doing.
Good. Okay. So with that kind of groundwork of where we came from in 2021 to where we might be going here in 2023, we've laid out really 4 basic goals for the corridor. And I guess I'd like to hear from the group if this is kind of the direction you were thinking, or if not, we can always add some items or adjust these. Again, these are going to go to this subcommittee group, and so I'll read through them. There's only 4 at this point, so just bear with me for a second, and then we'll open it up to you guys. So the goals I have are 1, to lay the foundation for encouraging higher density, multimodal, connected, multifamily, and mixed-use development nodes that include public open space along major transit corridors within the sewer district and the Jackson Road corridors. Number 2, to gather key stakeholder input regarding the future of this very important and unique part of Scio Township. Number 3, utilize the township master plan as it relates to Jackson Road sub-area, which we just talked about. And number 4, to consider and utilize the comments and direction from the Joint Planning Commission Township Board and DDA meeting held on August 10th, 2023. Now, I'll stop right there before I turn it over to Jan again on the idea of those goals and policies. If you don't, this is in your packet. This actually had Fran add, this is the actual text of the August 10th meeting. If you don't have this, I've got a copy if you want one. Anybody want this? What is this from?
From our August 10th meeting.
This is the August.
The
This is,
SWOT discussion.
yeah, this is the SWOT discussion. So
That was
if
in our
you want a
packet.
paper copy, you can. Oh, okay.
No, I printed that out.
Okay.
I have it. It's in the what do you call it? Packet.
Yep.
All right,
This is in the packet.
Yeah, and that should be in the packet, so anybody who's watching
Thanks.
online, you could, I'm not gonna go through this, but this is, these are the comments and ideas that were thrown out at that joint meeting. It's kind of if you're looking for some inspiration in this part of our exercise tonight, then that would be where you look. So those are the goals, general goals I'm thinking that we give to this corridor advisory group. And I guess that's the general loose name I'm calling this area. And this group is called the Jackson Road Corridor Advisory Group. So with that, Jan, I could turn it over to you if you don't have any thoughts or additions, or if you want to direct the conversation at this point.
Yeah, one thing, we do have multimodal in there and connected. I don't know if that describes adequately kind of what we're trying to do. The other thing, we've been having, discussions about workforce, affordable housing and that type of thing. And I realized that did not get in here, but, I would think that we want to look at a range of housing that meet different levels of affordability too, so that it can be a diverse from an income standpoint.
Yes,
Too.
I think that's very important.
I don't know what the wording is in there, but I think that's one element that is missing. It's a long sentence.
Maybe make it 2 sentences.
And does multimodal connected, I think, capture concisely what we're trying to do with mass transit, bicycles, it's a looking at all means of transportation.
I mean, I see what you're getting at. It's not, there's plenty of ways to snake around that or whatever, where we end up with the highway that it is still, without with only serving cars and kind of a nod to pedestrians or bicycles. So, yeah, another way to, it would be beneficial, I think, to reword that. I don't have the language yet, but where it was very clear what we were trying to say, right? I think the cars are well served.
Multimodal
Connected.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what that meant.
2 words trying to.
Sorry, Jeff, I just
No,
wanted
it's
to make
okay.
sure I'm
I
following
think the
you.
cars are well served on Jackson Road right now. So
They are.
if you're actually increasing multimodalism, if that's a word, then you would need to really focus on expanding bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure. And also, I guess the bus is doing fine there.
Except for perhaps the infrastructures to support with crossings and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that type of
Right.
stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Crossing from the bus.
One of the things I was thinking about in terms of multimodal connected, as I understand it being discussed tonight. As I've been riding around downtown Ann Arbor, and some of those posts that they have in the ground, and they try to further delineate the car, don't go past here. I think particularly in light of the speed which people go down Jackson Road, we might need to think about some of that to sort of protect bicyclists that are out in the road.
You're absolutely right. Any speed over 30 miles an hour is potentially legal. And so cars are going to be going more than 30 miles an hour. You need to have a physical barrier between anybody that's not in a car and somebody in a car.
Because
So
the-
maybe it's stronger, what you're saying is promote safe pedestrian bicycle and public transit. So, because like you said, cars are taken care of, we really need to promote those
Right.
modes.
So, I was thinking, it doesn't make sense to have the sidewalks be for both pedestrian and bikes. We need a bike lane. And we got enough room. What our medians are like yay, we're rear wide, so that could be done, because that way bicyclists just need to watch out for each other, pedestrians don't. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to have bikes on the sidewalks.
I mean, if you make the sidewalks really wide, then there's a argument to be said that you could have bikes and pedestrians, especially if you paint it, that seems to work out too. The size of the sidewalks they are right now, you couldn't have them sharing, right?
You can barely have two people passing.
Right.
Yeah, I like the idea, Jeff, that you had about, what you said, like cars are already taken care of. You know,
Right.
so multimodal, you're right, we're not trying to increase automobile use, that's already taken care of. So multimodal should, if we use that word, it should be kind of specific to things that aren't taken care of at this point.
I think we could, yeah, focus on pedestrian, bicycle, connectivity and safety.
Mhm.
And I think the safety piece is really important because that'll then enable more thinking about crosswalks and,
Right.
yeah, the connectivity there.
And connectivity in this discussion for this particular item is what, connecting what? Or having the path to be able to
Right, go from
designate bikes. and
A to
designate
B,
pedestrians. Okay.
yeah, you have to be able to get across Jackson Road, you have to be able to get from neighborhoods to
Yeah.
the businesses on Jackson
To
Road.
actually go somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't want to plagiarize, but I
Go
brought
ahead.
the city of Ann Arbor's code with me because I knew this would probably pertain to a lot of this, like the TC1 district. So
Mhm.
as far like as a general intent statement, it's, I think something along these lines that we can fill in for city, we can fill in township, but this district has been created to facilitate, encourage, and support redevelopment and infill development to realize mixed-use developments and achieve mixed-use corridors that support and sustain transit services, as well as encourage affordable housing, enable more housing choices, more sustainable forms of development with reduced resource and energy needs. Pedestrian-friendly designs are critically important in this district as all transit users of any mode begin and end their trips as pedestrians. Application of this district will further the goals expressed in all elements of the township's master plan, particularly the sustainability framework, climate action plan and comprehensive plan. So we could probably take that out and use portions of that.
What section is that?
Is that UDC?
Yes, it is. I brought a hard copy. It's, sorry.
Chapter 55.
5.12.9 TC1 transit corridors. And I'm sure we're gonna get into, we want to use probably the Pittsfield, what was Mandy, I forgot her last name.
Grew up.
Greywall.
Greywall, I knew I was gonna mispronounce that. If that's what we want to get into, because there's, lots of, I don't know if we need to reinvent the wheel, if it's like, that's what we want out there on the Ann Arbor
Oh, I
Lane
think it's a
Road.
Great idea.
Yeah, let's start moving in that direction.
What page is that on for those?
This is on page 19 of the UDC of the city of Ann Arbor.
So
So
chapter
it's
55.
section 5.12.9 TC1 transit corridor, general intent statement.
19.
Yes,
What's the site again? What's the?
it's
I mean,
5.12.9.
12.9.
It's titled TC1 transit corridor.
In the
And it's
chapter
the general, it's the
55.
general intent, it's the intent statement of that, which I think is very similar to what I think we're trying to accomplish.
Where's that on? Like, what is that overlay in the city?
It's not so much an overlay, we're rezoning. Just if you've been following along, it's along Stadium. We're starting it up on Plymouth
Briarwood,
Road.
Plymouth.
Yeah, it's over on South State Street and Washtenaw is
How
next.
far does
So
it go?
I'd have to look at the maps, but it's extensive. We have GIS maps and it's a lot of
Miles.
properties. So,
What chapter did you say
Yes.
that was?
Chapter 55,
55.
page 19, Ann Arbor, it's also called the UDC.
Unified Development Code.
Uniform.
That's our zoning code.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Chris.
Some good language we can
Yeah.
plagiarize, so.
Consider, never done that.
How, you know what, the other thing, Chris, it
Let's
would
face
be
it.
good to figure out, it goes along Stadium. Does it hit Maple anywhere? Does
Oh,
it
yeah.
go up We
Yeah.
should look at
There's a lot
that
of,
zoning,
gosh, I could
actually.
probably,
We could
if I looked
pull
at
it up.
You could go to the city's website and it'll show you maps. It's
Mhm.
fairly
The
extensive.
zoning
It's
maps.
the same thing on Plymouth Road and out on South
I
State
guess my
Street.
question is.
There's a lot of
How
parcels.
far does from the, like, does it follow the roadways
Yes,
and then just to a certain point?
yeah. Yeah, if I,
On the road, and it's
Oh,
bringing buildings towards bringing buildings towards the road with little or no setback. Sidewalks there, of course, putting parking in the middle or parking, behind it and making it two-story and in some
minimum
cases.
2 stories.
Right, and
Minimum.
sometimes requiring residential on the second floor.
That's correct.
So I'm not saying those things are what we're gonna do, but it's like what Pittsfield did, obviously around, Ann Arbor Saline Road and, Oak Valley, or wherever that is over there.
And for what it's worth, they've waived the parking requirement. So it used to be that you'd have the parking in front or in the rear, but
Minimum.
there's no more minimums. You don't have to install parking with these developers.
Because there's buses and.
Yep. Yep, so that's one way of not relying on the automobile.
E-bikes and spins, scooters and other modes, multi-modes.
Okay, I'm trying to look at the zoning map. And,
Well, you're in this, yeah, that's the zoning. I bet if you go to the city, let me see if I can get it.
yeah, I'm not, it's.
Go to, so you're in the zoning map. I don't know if it's
Right.
been updated with the TC1 there.
Should
Go to
I,
the City of Ann Arbor's main webpage and go to the planning department.
okay,
If you want, I could. Can you
because I'm
share?
just trying to see where it connects with Scio.
Right, if we go into the planning department, it should be, you know, like items under review or recent changes to the zoning map. There we go. Yeah, scroll down to planning, scroll back up, Jan. I wish I got new glasses. Planning initiatives, yeah, go to the city planning initiatives.
Nodes, what are the
There,
nodes?
do we
we're
have
talking
anything
about?
on
It's
TC
a,
TC1,
one.
it's
on,
a geographic area that we've
is it
Uses.
showing it on stadium?
East Stadium and
Might
Plymouth
have-
There we go,
corridors?
that's it,
Okay, but we're West
Okay.
Stadium.
certain density.
yes,
Ooh.
but it'll show
Also
you, at least give
Plymouth,
you an idea of the
Central Plymouth,
maps.
East Plymouth proposed, East
I think
Stadium.
that's a great question.
I don't think it's on West
Like a
Stadium.
group.
Because
Like
it's
come back to the
Washtenaw, I don't
roads.
see West Stadium.
I thought it went all the way. I mean, it's up by Miller,
Yeah, that's the part I want,
So,
well, let's
yeah.
try,
so.
okay, here's Washtenaw Avenue Stadium. It probably
Like I was
won't go
talking
far.
clusters.
So that's
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
that's not gonna
Yeah,
come
that's, I
our
think you're on
way.
Plymouth Road now, right?
Districts, neighborhoods, focuses, concentrations. Because there's just so much open space, is the
I
right
believe
word.
you'll have, you know, like how
Yeah, I
many
get
parcels, the size of the parcels, and there's just a lot of
Less
GIS
dense.
maps.
Yeah, we may have to, it may take a little
Yeah.
bit longer to come up with that, but it would be good to look at the intersection of Ann Arbor is doing with Scio.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe,
because I know even, you know, Westgate
Yeah.
is in there, so.
oh, well, maybe I can go
Sounds
back.
like anything that's a stroke, they rezoned this TC1.
Yeah.
You know what a stroke is?
Uh,
It's a strong town's term for a street and a road mixed together. They define a road as like basically what we call a highway. And a street like something that should be in a city, like a small street, you know, between places.
I can't
They
see
describe
that.
a lot of
Okay, this is something.
Something like Jackson Road is a stroke, right? The speeds are very high, but there's also places to
Jimmy
go on it.
John's.
It's a dangerous kind of design approach. Stadium's another example of a strode. You see them all over the place.
I assume that's the same thing for like Plymouth and Washington also.
Yes.
I just use it a lot of businesses, drives.
Yeah,
You can't
that-
be
yeah,
both a highway
everything
and a
coming in.
street. It's gotta be one or the other, but a strode is one trying to do both.
Yeah.
Oh, let's just see, because maybe they've already done some of
Yeah, I think the maps probably are updated, not on Plymouth, obviously, because that's under consideration.
but this is where it takes you. How do you,
But see, you're going into the zoning map, but
right, but it looks
So-
like they had done this area already. how do we? I'm trying to get community planning layers.
If you pick out a random address, it'll take you there, like, I don't know, at least for something does anybody know the address on Stadium?
Somebody look up Weber's. The address for Weber's.
I don't think Weber's is gonna be in that,
Yeah,
I don't think it comes off that.
We're
Does
gonna-
it
fast.
come there?
I don't
It's in
think
this
so.
area, doesn't
I
it?
mean, it's in the city, but I don't think that's in the TC1.
3050 Jackson Road.
But that'll give us a good idea, because you'll see the overlay map of how, yeah, that's still good, that'll give us.
You got it, Jen?
There you go, zoom out.
Is that shared with the members of the public?
No,
Do you need me to, oh, you're not. on
but
Zoom.
now
Yeah.
it's,
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So if you keep zooming out, I think it'll take us to the TC1. I think it's updated. There we go. Now you
Oh.
can start seeing it. So it's
okay,
shifted over. That's
TC
where
one
it's-
and then
yeah.
R5 and C3.
Yeah, that's a hotel motel. R5 is a hotel. So that's where
Okay.
it makes sense. If it's Weber's and all those other hotels.
All right, so the TC1 district is,
So yeah, it goes,
it goes, yeah, not quite that far, but it stops.
so there's Vets Park, so it's taking up there.
Yeah.
to the north.
It hits
Zinger.
this intersection right here and then all the way.
All these.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then it's, yeah, and what's it taking all the way down to, is there a street? I can't.
Yeah, right where you hit the residential
Church,
districts,
Yeah.
There's a church.
those residential
So
areas along state.
it's a big swath.
Mhm, mhm. So there'd be this intermediate kind of C3, we still have, you know, all the
Hotels?
dealerships, but then you really hit,
Yeah, Varsity.
you know, our
Suburban.
C.
But there aren't many
So-
dealerships in Ann Arbor.
Not anymore. Varsity's it.
Varsity.
It's just the Ford.
That's
It-
before.
it hits
Before it is.
Varsity and-
But Suburban is
yeah.
not. Yep.
And, yeah, so, okay,
If
so
you
there'd be a
go
little transition
West of
zone in
Wagner,
there and
you're in the
then,
township.
Right.
okay.
So, yeah, I'll definitely look at that. And I put on the screen, you can't really, I
Can
can't
you see
zoom in
that? Yeah,
any
you got
closer
it.
than that, but
Did you wanna see that, Kim? Did you get it?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah, so what they've got, this is, the brown is the TC1, and then it goes to like a hotel kind of district, and then this is it's a commercial zoning, and then we hit Scio.
Well, that's Wagner right there.
Yeah,
Okay. So ours, that would be easy for me.
it would be an easy kind of connection, the corridor connection, yeah. Yeah, and I think that it would also be good to look at, you know, the sections, because obviously Jackson changes as it moves out, but we've also started to get some higher density things like out at Baker. So it'll be
yeah, that'll be interesting.
kind of,
So on the screen for the folks at home, and the planning commission is, one of the boards I brought, and this just to kind of reiterate what we're talking about. Because this is the Jackson Road sub-area that's contained in the master plan, which is this kind of peach colored area here. Within the sub-area.
So is the Jackson Road sub-area as depicted in pink on that map the same as the J-Rod?
Yes, well, pretty darn close, yes.
The J-Rod is Jackson Road.
Overlay
overlay
district, which is the zoning.
Right,
This is the master plan.
but is it comport or does it follow J-Rod?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it might be off a couple properties, basically. And just to kind of keep your thoughts rolling here. On this side, I don't have a side by side, I'm sorry, but this is the sewer service map. So the sewer service map is actually a little bigger than the Jackson Road overlay area. So if you kind of look at this and then flip back to this, you know, there's quite a bit of area here that's not in the Jackson Road overlay that is within the sewer service district, like the Polo Fields, particularly the Polo Fields subdivision and the new Scio View subdivision. Right here, this is new Scio View, and this is Polo Fields.
Could I get those kind of, could you take one, could you put them next to each other?
Yep.
So for people that are looking, the sub areas in the Jackson Road corridor, that's on 61, that map, and the sewer is on sewer district service area is on 91.
Yeah, these are both out of our master plan, so.
Yeah, and I think it might be helpful to, you know, if it makes sense to align some of these things, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, although, you know, what's interesting is many of the areas that are in the sewer district tend to be residential as opposed to commercial. And where the Jackson Road corridor is primarily commercial. And Doug, I think it would also be helpful, you know, to kind of overlay, it'd be interesting to compare existing use within the Jackson Road, so we really have an idea. Because there's still some residential properties in that corridor.
Yeah.
And that would be, I think, helpful to
Yeah, the whole
to see.
Luella subdivision area is within that area. Yeah.
Right, I was gonna just say that this must be going down to Liberty here, because I know Liberty's
Yes,
included.
yes, yep, just the bottom of Liberty. So yeah, as you can see, the sewer service area is a bit thicker, a little more robust or than the Jackson Road.
At the southeast side.
Yeah.
But the sub area goes north of 94, but we know that sewer doesn't.
Yeah, just in that one spot.
I'm like,
Yep.
and is that Baker?
Yes.
And therein lies, that's a pinch point, right there, north of Baker.
You're saying that the water district goes
Not water,
sewer?
sewer. So in other words, this is the J-Rod, and J-Rod doesn't go down here, but J-Rod goes up here. But sewer doesn't go north of, and so here's Baker Road right there. So if we want to do development in the J-Rod north of 94 along Baker on either side, then we can't do it because we currently don't have sewer. So that's what I mean, that's a problem, well, I shouldn't say a problem.
Right, that's right, because we do have water that goes.
Yeah,
not
it's the
sewer.
Heritage Woods, it's, you know,
Added to their plan.
that would have been a much easier decision if there were sewer over there, probably.
Okay, John.
So yeah, I hope that helps kind of people's thoughts a little bit.
So
Didn't we, you know, at our August 10th meeting, don't we have something like 11 or 1,200 REUs?
1,200.
1,200, was that the number? So it's, we're limited. It's not like we're gonna be building high rises all along Jackson Road. We've got 1,200, we're at capacity.
Yeah, I do want to remind people of, OHM has talked about the last time the sewer district was negotiated. Part of it was a planning basis for the negotiation. So, you know, really thinking, I think right now we are certainly limited, you know, by the sewer district, but I think we want to, especially with this planning effort, think about what kind of development do we think would be beneficial along Jackson Road corridor? And there may be a couple phases to it, such as, you know, this is certainly dependent on negotiation. I don't know, you know, and it might be good to test out, you know, where the city is if we came up with, you know, something that was probably not as dense as the TC one, but, you know, that would be helping us reduce the development pressures on other areas of the township and concentrating it in. Now, I don't know what, you know, what Ann Arbor has said about their sewer capacity with the TC one. Have there been any discussions about that?
You know, I was in a meeting the other day. This has nothing to do with Jackson Road, but I know with that new development over at Elbow Field for U of M, they're
Yeah.
having internal talks that they don't have the sewer capacity, so they're in negotiations. I don't know, you know, Mr. Reiser knows more than that, but they're gonna have to expand the capacity, I think, out there, so.
Where is this?
Aldell Field?
You know where the
Putting in
marching
dorms?
band used to practice? They're building a big dorm there, two
Oh,
hundred
I thought, is that
and,
Hoover Street? Is that Hoover? Is Aldell off Hoover?
By the old thing, just
Yeah, by
where the old
Fingerly.
Fingerly,
I
the
think it.
Fingerly
Yeah.
Yeah, but
softball
it's
field, the
a two
track.
hundred and some
rail
bed
tracks.
dorm. It's a complex, a dorm complex. Yeah, all electric
They don't
food
have
service,
capacity there.
all electric building, Geo, yeah, yeah.
So Kim, I think you had you were throwing out a couple questions there about terms like node and stuff like that. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just wanted to make sure I understood what the term meant, and I was just asking what nodes are. You said they're geographic areas like districts.
That we identify ourselves, yeah. Generally, they have something that's in common. Could be a residential node or commercial node, or it's usually like a place that people go to and come from. A node would be linked
Yeah.
to other nodes through transportation corridors in some way.
And when I know this is probably something that the advisory group is gonna be thinking of. I was using the word clusters last time when we had our meeting about this, and that's something that you envision the advisory group to identify? Certain nodes or?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because clustering has different meanings in zoning.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong term.
Yeah, so anyway, but yes, the higher density nodes, yeah, would be identified, yes, that'd be the idea.
Now, my understanding, while you guys are talking, I think we just renewed our water contract.
It's coming up.
Did we
I think-
just renew our sewer contract? Something just got renewed, no?
I think it automatically renews, and Stacy, I don't have
Yeah, it does automatically renew.
I have my notes in my car, but I think it automatically re-ups for 10 years.
And that did not happen yet.
I think it's on the verge of happening. We could text Matt or Stacy and find out when that happens. I mean,
Yeah, we did not request them to be part of this tonight.
right.
so.
one of the things that sewer capacity and where we have sewer is, I think, needs to be part of this discussion. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up now, but, density needs sewer and, you know, the best plans don't work as well if you have to put in private sewers.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
yeah.
We don't wanna do that. So we want sewer, so. And when is the time and what is the process for reaching out to the municipality that provides the water? How do we best do that? You know, is that a Joyce Parker and a Stacy, or Laura Krebs, or you know?
So that would be a question that we should probably say, when, how,
Yeah, right.
and, I mean, we're anticipating if we want to meet some of these even preliminary goals, we know we're constrained. So it probably would be good to at least find out whether we're dreaming or if there's potential.
Right, and would Ann Arbor more likely allow us to do it if we're putting density there? Like we need it for density along this transportation corridor that leads to your municipality and, you know.
Would it make sense to add a person from engineering to our advisory group?
Oh, I think that it probably does make sense for somebody from OHM.
Yeah, because infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure is critical to it. Yep, good.
Especially
Good
because
point. Duh.
at some point, we also need to, at some point, do we talk about truing up or reconciling or matching the J-Rod with sewer capacity as it goes north? Like, what do we want to have at the freeway exit north of Baker Road, up to Marshall Road? I'm not saying, and so like, do we get those commercial buildings off of the sewers, off of the private septics that they have? And do we directionally bore lines under there and put in a lift station somewhere?
And would those people pay for that?
Well, I mean, that's part of the discussion, and is it too late to get Heritage Woods? Cause one of the things they said that they'd do is eventually they'd come over to a municipal sewer. They'd come, so is it too late? Are they too late in the phases where, you know, I'm sure they'd rather have municipal sewer than their own private sewer system, the maintenance that, and the, you know, the Spicer and Kent parcels, someday those might be commercial
I
rather
don't know
than.
what that is.
But those are, you know, as you drive,
The residential along Baker.
as you drive north on Baker, past the truck stops, and there's some houses along there. And the,
Before Marshall, you
Yeah, the
mean?
two-
yes, that's right, that's right.
The two gentlemen that have spoke to the planning commission.
Yeah. And board, but so there's a number of houses that, you know, could very well be, commercial someday because they have a easement agreement or access agreement that's part of it. So, and then on the other side, so there could be a different kind of development in the future than there is now if we have sewer capacity.
So one of the things that I like the planning commission and of course the advisory group is to think about, we use our zoning on Jackson Road to curtail or shape development.
Right.
Okay, now, you want to bring the sewer further north.
I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
That's but our Jackson Road, that's part of the J-Rod.
It doesn't matter what's part of the J-Rod, it's what's part of the sewer district.
I agree, right.
They're separate. It don't mean that they have to be one married together. We can have some separation there, but the point I want to make is that by extending that, do we open up the door to say, I mean, what if somebody says, hey, I want water and sewer? Come to my house.
And they're 3 miles north on Baker Road, so to speak. What if they want, yeah,
How far along
Yeah,
Baker?
I appreciate what you're saying,
I
right?
understand what you're saying. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want you to hear what I'm saying.
No,
There's not a right or wrong.
no, I get it.
It's a different angle, a different issue, and a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, because once the barrier is really 94, and once you cross 94, it's much easier to, yeah.
And I respect that, appreciate that, and understand, like, there's got to
Because
be a
I
border.
think, that one of the things I want to say is that it's ongoing. And I've noticed since my tenure on the commission, there's a philosophy, if you will, or a way of looking at it. But we have some areas in our community that are more suburban. We have some areas in our community that are commercial. And we have some areas in our community that are rural. And there's the ongoing jujitsu, you know,
Tensions, back and forth.
tensions, different ways of looking at it that we'll be dealing with for many, many years because development is here. So I just kind of want to throw that out as an overlay itself on everything that we're doing here. So I'm just not looking for anybody
And
to
I-
agree or to make any decisions or anything like that, but
And I only mention this spot because it's on a freeway exit, which suggests a certain density, a certain level of development rather. And it's also earmarked as J-Rod. Now, whether we should make that green and get rid of the pink, that's a discussion maybe you have too.
so that remark assumes that I agree that we're gonna go further north up to that area that we can go with more commercial building.
Actually,
I'm
it's
not-
zoned that way now. It's zoned highway
It's on highway
commercial.
commercial, yeah.
But it's
But it's not supported with the
infrastructure.
infrastructure.
That's the
And
other.
that's what we use to make decisions. Let's get it back to it.
Well-
So I just want you to get the point I'm trying to make here.
No, I
It's not
understand.
about the fact that there's a line on that map and there's a line on this map, and shouldn't we make all that jive together? If that's not the only way to look at it, is what I'm
And
suggesting.
I'm not trying to say we gotta, let's damn our torpedoes and develop north of here. I'm not trying to say that at all, Kim. What I'm saying is that is commercial. And if there isn't sewer, it's going to be commercial with septic. I mean, that's some of the push and the pull, commercial with septic or commercial with sewer, while not saying, hey, have at it, folks, let's punch it farther north or farther west into the rural areas. I'm not trying to promote that at all. It's really, how do we have commercial north of Jackson that's already in the J route?
That's safe, that's right,
Right,
my sense,
that's-
because you brought this issue up before,
Yeah.
and that my sense is that that's one of your concerns about having, like, the pilot gas station is
Yes.
septic.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Worried
right.
about safety.
That's, yeah.
Right,
An
right.
apartment complex on a septic.
Or all those businesses on Newman Boulevard are on septic.
On where?
Newman Boulevard, north of, it's a pretty big industrial office park, and it's all on septic.
Where's that?
Just north of, north on Baker on the east side of the road. You ever seen those like statues with the little, that like, looks
Oh,
like
yeah,
stacking-
just
stacking
north of
cells.
Marshall.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, there's an industrial subdivision back there, a rather large office complex. Used to be called Creative Solutions, I'm not sure what it's called anymore.
Should we point this at the map again?
I just switched it away,
Okay,
just so people could see us talking, but.
yeah,
Okay,
we're talking about the map.
all right. So any other, do we want to continue on? So we added kind of the, the affordability piece, the focus on pedestrian, bicycle and public transit, because cars are kind of taken care of, and the safety piece, right? Those are awesome additions. Okay, then just gather key stakeholder input.
Yeah, that's not a real hard one. And what I meant by that, key stakeholder is planning commission, township board, DDA, and OHM. That's a good pick. Talk about those things. And then the fourth one, to consider utilize the comments and directions from the joint planning commission meeting that we had on August 10th, and I have that available. It's also in the packet for tonight. A lot of good ideas in there. A lot of really good ideas in that list that we're kind of throwing around on that. So that will be kind of a basis for, the group will get that, and they'll be able to talk and do that. So those are kind of the goals and general goals. And if everyone's generally happy, I mean, I've got some notes and Jen's got some notes, and we'll look at the minutes as well. But if everyone's generally okay with that, we'll move on to the advisory group makeup is kind of the next step.
I'm fine with it. Do you need a motion from us? Okay.
Okay, so I'm looking at an advisory group. If it was up to me, if I was in charge, I would make it smaller than larger. And I don't mean really small, but I mean manageable in my opinion. In my opinion, that's about 6 people. But it's really up to the planning commission depending on which direction you want to go. We can't really have more than 3 of any particular board or commission, because then it's a public meeting. But if we keep it below 4 of either planning commission or township board members or DDA members, it doesn't have to be posted as a public meeting. If that's important, we could still post as a public meeting. I guess that's a whole nother discussion. But that being said, just in the small groups I've worked with, my recommendation is 2 planning commission, 2 township board, 2 DDA. I would say maybe you bump that up to 3 planning commission if there's really a strong desire of another planning commissioner to be a member. And then that would be 7 people instead of 6. That's fine as well.
Plus staff as needed.
Yes, that's not including like me and Stacy or.
Got it. OHM or.
Do you like are you agreeable to the idea of having one of our engineers
Oh,
participate as a
absolutely,
member?
yeah. I'm not counting them as a member.
So they would participate as a staff
Yes.
person? Okay, okay.
And I'm just good, I like the idea of 2 or 3 because I think there are gonna be scheduling issues. And I think we wanna make sure we have at least 2 people from every organization. So maybe if there are 3, then,
If you get 2,
yeah.
you got it.
That's fine. It's really up to you guys.
So you're recommending 3 of the planning commission?
Well, 3 for all of them, because I think scheduling is gonna be a little bit of an issue.
Oh, so that'd be the
Yeah.
9.
Yeah, and, you know, they're
It could be anywhere from 6 to 9.
6 to 9, yeah.
Does this group need a chair, or, yeah, Doug, you're the one, just somebody making sure
Leads.
they're organized?
Yeah, just kind of organizing it. We're not really coming to any, I don't anticipate any motions being made by this group. It's more advisory. I think we're calling it the advisory, Jackson Road Advisory Group or something like that.
Yeah, because I think the goal is, in a smaller group, it's easier to kind of hash some things out and get in. And the idea would be these 3 people should have diverse kind of opinions. They shouldn't be in alignment, they should have the diverse, you know, perspectives and then kind of, and it's just a way of making sure that we hear
Flush out
those
the
different
issues.
perspectives and so forth, and then Doug can pull that together and provide the planning commission with that input.
Okay, well, we'll go with 3. I'm gonna, again, the goal after tonight is I'm gonna put this, I'll use the comments we received tonight, revise this. I'll probably add some costs to these and I'll get that to the township board as a proposal.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, we had in the budget, the planning commission had looking at Jackson Road, and we had like about $10,000 roughly in that, and about $10,000 to do some other zoning updates. It can mix, but we do have the budget dollars to be able to do the effort.
Oh, yeah, for planning purposes. I remember when you got
Yeah.
that.
But the board does have to actually authorize the expenditure. And so, and it's good to have at least the scope and so forth pulled together. Okay.
And then, once this is done, I will guess at that point, I know there was a lot of people a month ago or so, last time I was here, when that wanted to be part of this. It seemed like the whole planning commission, which is great. But there'll have to be some decision made at some point about who the 3 are gonna be.
What about members of the public? The planning experience or interested members of the public?
That would be up to you guys if you wanna.
I think we should keep the advisory group. I mean, we're up to 9 from 6. And everything's coming back to the planning commission, so the members of the public could be.
And then ultimately the board,
Weigh in, yep.
the board's gonna make this group, right? We're gonna recommend this group, the board's gonna make this group. I mean, right, I mean, yeah, they're gonna sanction this group or
Yes.
create, yeah, right, formally.
Well, they need to fund the effort. But this is a planning commission group. This is, our task is updating the zoning ordinance.
Got it.
So, I mean, yeah, they need
This
to.
is advisory to the planning commission.
Correct,
And then the ordinance, anything we recommend goes to the board.
exactly.
So
Then there'd be public
this group
hearings.
helps the planning commission, which advises the board does what it does.
Right, but we're required to have, you know, not only, we're required to have a public hearing, once there's, I mean, we'll have public comment all the way through as we're working on the ordinance, and then once we have language, there's a public hearing on the actual language of the ordinance. So, yeah.
At what stage are we going to start involving the business and property owners that this will be affecting along Jackson and J-Rod?
Well, predominantly that's the DDA.
So,
The 3 DDA members will be involved from the start. And then at some point, either this advisory group or even the planning commission, you guys could then do an effort once we know more about what's going on.
Yeah, but zoning is gonna be prospective. So, I don't know, impact them based on what's next to them and how the corridor looks. It won't impact
Right.
their site plans, their conditional use permits, or anything like that.
Now, the black and white of it is if we do an amendment to the J-Rod, or if we do a new form-based code, everyone that's affected will have to be notified. So at a minimum, there's a public hearing requirement.
But I do think, short of, once we know where we're going and have, something that's visual and so forth, I think, it is important to probably do something, not just, okay, we're having a public hearing, but have a more casual kind of dialogue with folks. I think that would be important, and the DDA can help us
We could do like an
with
open,
that.
maybe do an open house or
Yeah.
something. at
Yeah.
some point. I might put that in my proposal.
Yep.
There you go. It's a good idea.
Yeah, because it's definitely gonna be, well, and it may not be a big change, but I think bringing multifamily and density will be a big enough change that people will wanna be aware of it.
That's good. I like that. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do 9, and then I'll flesh this text out a little bit, and then ultimately the planning commission, township board, DDA is gonna have to choose 3. So, but we're not doing that tonight, but I'm sure that'll happen.
Yeah, actually, the DDA did come forward with, because I
Oh.
had been emailing people about this, and they do have 3 people, so.
All right. Good. They're on top of it. Now, it's also my desire to have this group have a relatively limited scope with a relatively limited time frame. And so as you can see from this proposal, I am proposing only 3 meetings of this body, of this advisory group. Now, those might be 1 per month, which is probably more than likely what we would do. We might skip a month depending on Christmas and things like that. But let's say 3 to 4 months, 3 meetings. Before we get into what I kind of fleshed out about what the meetings would be about, how does that sound, everybody? Just kind of a limited scope, 3 meetings, maybe 4, depending on if there's another issue comes up.
Sounds like a smart way to do it.
Okay, so then the first meeting I've got down as I call this kind of like, sort of like what we did tonight, sort of where are we? And we sometimes we have these meetings and we talk about zoning and the master plan, the sewer capacity, and the roadway capacity. But I don't know that we've ever really put it all together in one spot for people to really understand. And so the first meeting I call understanding the playing field. And so that's going to be a review of comprehensive existing conditions, including all those things I just said. Existing zoning, existing master plan, sewer capacity, roadway capacity, multimodal transportation capacity, and current connectivity. Where are there gaps? Where are there problems in the connectivity? That sort of thing. So get everyone, it's good to get everybody on the same page as our first meeting and say, here is where we are at this point in time in Scio Township on the Jackson Road corridor. Maybe let everyone know, I would guess that not everyone fully understands the full scope of the Jackson Road overlay district itself. It's actually quite a flexible district, and that's currently in place. I think it's worth spending a few minutes talking about the existing Jackson Road overlay district before we just go and change something that maybe doesn't all completely have to be changed. So that will, the outcome of that meeting we will hopefully I'll get a feeling from the group that yes, some changes are needed based on existing conditions and goals, and maybe some ideas of what those changes could be, generally speaking. Or I suppose the first meeting could be our last meeting. If everyone sits around and says things are great the way they are, then we probably don't have meeting number 2. I don't anticipate that happening, but
Well, that would not get to our goals
yeah, that would-
of residential,
it wouldn't.
multimodal.
Yeah, but the outcome is a confirmation that these changes are needed and then kind of help it's kind of like I always say in planning, it's like you start with a big funnel, and everything gets thrown into the funnel, and it gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrow, till you finally get to the bottom, and you actually have something that people want, that we're trying to get to, but we first throw a bunch of stuff in, and it just gets narrow, 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 narrow. And so I want to throw all that stuff in the top, in the beginning, and then we're gonna come out to some kind of goals and ideas at the end.
Now, I just thought of said, I think there's a master plan for the DDA or something.
Yes.
So I wonder if there's gonna be
Mhm.
an issue with jiving or integrating what their issues are. That's why I'm glad that they're gonna be participating because, so I just throw that out there.
Well, I think that should be a part of the existing
Yeah.
playing field.
Absolutely, it's just not listed on these.
Right, we're gonna,
Okay.
add it, definitely add it.
That's a good
That's a good point.
A lot of the DDA master plan isn't necessarily a land use master plan. They're not talking about land uses, they're kind of talking about their goals and scope and what they are able to do with the money they capture.
Okay.
And then there's a boundary, there's some geographic part to it, there's a boundary of the DDA itself. But the DDA master plan has to do, a lot of it has to do with what the DDA can and can't do, just with their money, with that money capture.
Okay.
But that would be good because obviously it would
Yeah.
be nice to align.
Yeah, and they're so the DDA, you guys may or may not know, you probably know. It was initially created to develop the boulevard, right? And so they take the capture from any new development through a tax increment financing authority. And they use that additional money that occurred as the corridor was improving to pay for things. That's what a DDA does, or a TIFA does, to pay for things within that district. So the DDA district, in this particular case, they had a pretty narrow scope of using that money for the boulevard and floating bonds, and then being able to have money to pay for the boulevard, and then paying back the bonds. Now, that's probably super overly gross, description, but that's basically what they do. Well, over time, my recollection is there have been some inquiries about, are there other uses that the township can put to some of that tax increment financing authority money that's not just boulevard? Are there other things they can do? And I don't know, John, if you guys have gotten into this discussion at all at the township board level, but I know this topic has come up before. So that might be a good.
What the capture can be used for.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Fink on that.
Okay,
So anyway, that's a good topic for maybe the group, and the DDA probably has very specific ideas.
yeah, but it would be good to, include that, so.
So that's meeting number one.
Oh, you know what?
What?
I think we should also add plan development along Jackson Road, because there may be some folks that may not, especially in the DDA, may not know, what the current approved and proposed plans are.
Okay.
Right, you mean PUD wise
Or just any developments that
Development in general?
have been approved or are in the pipeline for Jackson Road, because that will, it changes the existing conditions soon, right? Mhm,
I suspect Ryan Gable is pretty on top of things.
mhm, mhm.
And is there a DDA map with respect to, is that a?
Yes, we have a DDA layer. I don't have it. here,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we have a
Yeah,
DDA.
and I think it would be good to really, for the group to overlay those, so we have,
I can look
you
online.
can overlay the maps.
Yeah.
So you can really see
It's in the master plan somewhere.
Right.
well, they have,
I'm looking at
but
it.
overlaying them, I think would be helpful.
Yep.
Right,
Okay, then we go into meeting two, so that we've laid the groundwork for here's what I say, understanding the playing field. So now we get into meeting two, and we look at some options and some advising about things like density, both residential and commercial, possible incentives for that sort of density, housing types. Again, amendment to the J-ROD, I think that's a foregone conclusion in some form or another. I think there is a bigger question whether maybe we should be looking at a form-based code rather than the Jackson, although the Jackson Road corridor is kind of, there's definitely form-based code elements to it. And then consider node strategy versus differing zoning districts versus north-south differentiation. Differentiation, sorry.
You mean north-south on Jackson Road?
Yeah. And I
What
think-
is node strategy?
Well, just trying to identify where those nodes are or where maybe they should be.
Yeah, for
Corridor.
instance, do we want something that is the same all along that 6 mile stretch? Or do you concentrate some of these?
Gotcha. Subdivided even more.
Because you probably have better luck accomplishing some of these goals if you can create a few locations that actually do these things, so rather than try to spread it out over 6 miles. That's gonna be difficult to do.
I think one of the things that's missing here is looking at the achieving connectivity, pedestrian, bike, connectivity. And that's just, within and along and to Jackson Road, it has multiple dimensions.
Southeast west.
You're saying missing from the
Meeting
meeting
two.
two bullet points and their task,
Correct.
considering strategies for increasing.
Yeah, and-
multimodal.
Yeah, and bringing, connecting, especially, some of the higher density residential with Jackson Road, as well as along Jackson Road. And then within, if you go to the node strategies within.
I think there's an interesting bullet point here that we kind of came up with that is, talks about mixed uses. And, I'm hearing from the planning commission during certain types of uses that maybe full-on mixed uses of everything isn't what we want to do. So maybe there are some exclusions to the mixed uses that we specifically want to mention, which
You
we
say- Oh,
which we
sorry.
could do.
You don't want like car washes as
I
considered.
don't know how many we
mixed use, I see.
need along that 6 mile stretch.
Well, are car washes conditional though in whatever zone they're in? They're not a by right, are they?
They might be by right in C3, which is highway commercial, which we don't have a lot of highway commercial, just around Zeven 94 and Baker 94 is pretty much the only place we have highway
I think you can defeat car washes though with a form-based zoning.
You might be able to, that's true.
commercial. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
But anyway, it's just an interesting idea that, we talk about mixed uses and the Jackson Road Overlay District is pretty permissive in allowing a whole lot of stuff. And
Oh,
maybe
yes.
we don't,
Storage.
yeah,
I
maybe we
mean,
don't,
that's kind of a gripe of mine for the Jackson Road Overlay District.
maybe we don't want all of that stuff.
yeah, and the discussions we've had about drive-throughs, you could be more specific about where those would be. And they still could be conditional uses.
What were you saying? Like what?
You may want to be more prescriptive about where drive-throughs would be allowed, and they still could even be conditional uses.
Yeah, we have a rash of drive-through requests.
Yeah, I thought they knew this was coming and so they're all trying to get it in now. So it's harder to.
Well, I think it's a COVID response too.
Yeah, I mean, if I were a business, a restaurateur, I understand it completely.
Well, they could bring it out to your car, you don't have to have a drive-through. There's a,
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
one of the things that I think that we had talked about and possibly, I guess we haven't discussed it in either the first meeting or the second meeting, but one of the things we had talked about earlier tonight at least was identifying open public space or opportunities for public open space, which I think that we desperately need on this side of, well, on that side of 94.
Which way you pointing to it, Jeff?
Towards
North
94.
or south?
South
North.
of 94.
Mm.
Yeah, south of 94. Cause I
So
feel like
south
there's like
side.
no parks.
South of 94 or on the
Yes.
south side of Jackson Road? Which one are you saying?
South of 94.
Okay.
You mean, just like parks along that corridor?
Yeah, even on Jackson Road, there are
I,
no parks.
right, and they push back hard.
Who does?
Well,
DDA
the
does.
developers, I mean,
Well, I think they need to be a part of, if you can create those high-density developments, they need to incorporate public space, because then it's open public space, but it's also serving some immediate residents. So it's not just any kind of pocket park along Jackson Road where you have to drive to it.
But maybe I'm naive about this, but I'm thinking about like the PUD where the cinema is right now. That
Goodrich.
even if they were to do a denser development there, they really don't have the space to include a park, do they?
I don't
Feels like they
know.
don't really have that
If
much
they- if they
space.
get-
Well, there's
if they get the
18,
ability to
there's
go up-
18 acres there.
18 acres? That is 18 acres? That-
Yeah, because there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of parking between that building and
Have you seen-
94.
And there's stuff
drive
on the
around,
side.
it's
like-
crazy behind the
Oh, okay, I haven't been back
driver
behind
behind
it.
it.
And I was thinking it would make sense for that development to have open space for people to be able to go. I mean, they're all gonna be in there. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, that's what I was trying to get at though, is that I just feel like there's not really any park space. There's nowhere to just
Mhm.
go hang out
Yeah.
outside on
And-
Jackson.
And it's interesting, one of the metrics that SEMCOG has in their green dashboard is residential areas being within walking distance of park. And, we have, some preserved spaces, but not all those preserved areas have trails or things like that. And then when you have multifamily, you're gonna have a range of population and you need more active open space too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a walk in the woods is nice, but sitting on a park bench is sometimes what you need. So those are things I'd like to see. I don't know if that's something that could be included in this or.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, because one of the goals does talk about public open space.
Right.
Chris, anything to spot there?
No, I think it's a great idea. That's it, yeah, open space.
And then the last little bullet point there was amending the, no, we're not gonna get into the minutia of amending the PUD ordinance, but there are items within the PUD ordinance that could help these strategies. And perhaps just a nod that is needed. And, Jan, I know we've been kind of, I don't wanna say holding the PUD ordinance, but we've sort of been holding the PUD ordinance until
Yes,
we
we're
kind of
holding it.
until we kind of get to this effort.
Mhm.
So that's and another important offshoot of this will be to finish the PUD ordinance.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we're good with meeting 2. Everybody good?
Sure.
Meeting 2. And then we get to meeting 3. And we're just gonna, this will be I assume this will be the last meeting of the advisory committee where we'll come up with a group of strategies based on meeting 1 and meeting 2 in direction for the planning commission. And the outcome of this, I wrote it because it's so important. The outcome of this is that these strategies would then go to the planning commission and will help our effort with updating the actual ordinance language. And we'll then have ideas from the DDA members, ideas from the township board members, ideas from planning committee, the three planning commissioners that are part of it. So that when we do finally get the ordinance written, we can be pretty confident that we're hopefully at that point all on the same page or pretty close to being on the same page. And then at that point, the next.
Well, before you move on.
Yep.
Meeting 3, is that where we talk about identifying nodes?
We'd probably do that in meeting 2. But I have that as one of the third from the bottom bullet point, consider node strategy. So,
Okay,
yeah, we'd probably do that in meeting 2.
Yeah, because I thought what was really interesting that came out of this was, they were talking about, different zoning districts, nodes, differentiating between north of Jackson Road and south, because south connects with more residential areas and north has that hard 94 border. Just thinking of how the characteristics are different.
and one of the things I think would be helpful for the group is to identify where the existing open spaces are right now in terms of determining nodes. Like,
That would go back to
where are the
adding
parcels
that
that
to
are
one.
open, like there's a
Vacant.
big parcel
Yep.
in the
That's the
north,
same thing.
south side that's still open, that kind of thing.
Existing open and vacant spaces.
Yes.
Yeah,
Open
well,
and
it's sort of
vacant.
like existing uses,
That'll
right?
show up in the existing one.
Okay. All right.
So
But-
when you say open and vacant, you mean places that are not in business, but there's a building on it
Or there isn't anything on it.
oh, okay.
All right, and then basically at this point, if everyone is relatively satisfied, with their 3 meetings, this effort would then be turned back over to the planning commission.
I'm just thinking, looking at all the stuff that happens in meeting 2. I'm almost thinking that may take 2 meetings and, your proposal should probably include an additional meeting. I'm just looking at all
An
that.
overflow meeting, yeah.
And that's the meeting and it may need to. I'm just looking, I don't know, we could even get through that in one meeting.
Yeah, that might be a lot.
So. And is there gonna be a packet for that meeting? Okay. So I'd ask that you include, if you don't mind, those 2 maps. And then this map, which is the DDA map, which has, it kind of overlaps, but then it's got this little spur that goes north all the way to Marshall Road. It's DDA. So, and it's kind of follows the one on the right, but it doesn't, I don't know. Yeah, just so we can kind of, this produces taxes for a certain capture. That, the one on the right is like
That's just the
that's an
planning.
overlay, like a planning perspective. And there's where you can get your toilet flushed on the left one, right? So there's 3 different kind of maps.
Yeah, that would be available at the very first meeting.
Okay, yeah, good,
Yeah,
thanks.
I've got the first map. Okay, thank you, Joe,
Yeah,
for this. I really appreciate it.
yeah, I think this is exciting, this is really like our core area.
And this is, as you guys know, I'm not really coming to many planning commission meetings anymore, but it's gonna be Laura's duty. I'm not quitting, I'm not retiring, and this is the kind of thing I wanna do. I wanna work, this is what,
Special projects?
as a planner, you want to do planning, and so this is fun kind of stuff, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the township on this kind of stuff.
And I guess I would also ask that, yours and Laura's, J-Rod forms-based mix be kind of part of the materials in the packet too.
What was it?
Well, it may have been updated, but like I bring this to all these, because I think it kind of talks about what we're have in mind. And I don't mind it as an exhibit, as the page of what a TC1 that Ann Arbor does, or what Pittsfield does, or however they do it, but I have some examples of other jurisdictions that people can kind of drive to relate and see what we're talking about. And then, do you mind if I think there's a question, no objection for me.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pam.
Pam Boyd, a Scio resident. There's one thing or two things I'd like to suggest. That you also look at the downsides of mixed use. For example, the George on the south side of Ann Arbor. And I guess there are one or two in the Plymouth area that have not been rented out completely. And the George has been around for 10 years or so, and it's kind of got a stigma. And so in looking at mixed uses, would you also look at the failures before you make decisions on saying, yes, this is what Scio needs? The other thing is, I would ask the question, before you start your research, what is the elevator speech that you would use to describe Scio Township? So Dexter, I would call it a small, quaint town. Chelsea, I would say jiffy mix, small town farming. When I moved here 30 years ago, I called it not Ann Arbor, large properties, quiet. And so before you make these big decisions on the Jackson Road corridor, what is Scio Township? And are you creating the Jackson Road corridor, our downtown? Are you making it something that people will repeat? Do you have an image that you want people to see when they think of Scio? So what is our shtick? And I think that if you don't have that elevator speech, you may not make the best decisions because you're not pulling a homogeneous definition, a homogeneous environment.
Yeah.
So
Because
that's,
we have this major, what I consider a dichotomy of suburban, rural, and then we have this major corridor going.
yes,
And it's interesting how other people view us. I've had people say to me in the other townships, Scio is urban. And I thought, oh, are we? Well, well, compared to Sylvan, I guess we are urban. Compared to Lima, we are urban.
And following up what you said earlier, Scio's a lot of things. It does have urban. On the southeast side, it's pretty dense. The Trailwinds now is pretty dense. Along Zebra Road, there's some dense residential, but it's also a lot of protected properties. We have that village and the LPC, so it's a lot of rural, it's a lot of up north with those protected properties. And then there's that damnable Jackson Road that goes through at 60 miles an hour that we have to contend with.
And I think some of it is we're being forced to deal with it because I've said this before, Ann Arbor's already used up all its land, that's why they're going up. So, and not just us, all the townships are facing development and fighting about it and sizing it down. It had that major development, a residential development that was gonna be out in the country of Dexter Township, and the residents stood up and said, no, it's too big, and they ended up sizing down the units. So it's not just us, and we're prime, and I think sometimes, I remember saying this during a meeting in which Crossroads was doing a presentation, that we are not, I don't view us as a bedroom community. Now, I studied public administration, so I understood what bedroom communities are, but I never looked at ourselves as a bedroom community. Because it's where I live. I mean, I used to go to my office was in downtown Ann Arbor. So I I think you know, it's interesting comment that you're making, because this kind of comes up a lot. I've made a lot of comments about the rural, urban nature of our community, and I think it's something that's an interesting way that you put it. How do we sell ourselves? How do we even view ourselves?
Yeah, well, I think what's so cool about Scio is we've got it all. I mean, where else could
The
you?
river,
We've got
Yep.
awesome, you know,
That's
we've got
a river.
preserved lands, we've got trails, we've got, I mean, the ecosystem that we've got awesome farmland. Well, you can bike to a farm stand and pick up whatever you want. You can get your car repaired, you can, you know, it really is.
my car.
Yeah, right. But we have, and what I'd like to see.
Come here and get your car, but we like sustainability.
Right. But what we don't have is we don't have a lot of diversity in our housing types. We don't have diversity within our economic kind of grouping. We have an age, and I'm part of it, an aging population, I mean, dramatically aging population who are living alone. And so.
And something we don't know about, which is, we don't know how many disabled people.
Mhm.
Like I was thinking about that the other day when we were talking about the Curtis property. It's like, I don't even know how many people are in
You can kind of
wheelchairs
look-
in our
You can kind of
community.
look for that with the board of review. You can talk to one of the board of review or talk to our assessor, and she can tell you how many people are not paying taxes because they're disabled.
Okay.
Oh, that's-
Disabled or poverty exemption?
Pardon me?
Poverty exemption or?
Yes, poverty,
Poverty
there's,
exemption.
there's poverty, there is veterans who've been
Right, yeah.
injured. So there's a couple of different things,
Categories,
and Andrea can answer that question.
Great, thank you.
But one of the things Scio doesn't have is any kind of, you know, visible center. You know, we really don't have, where do we gather as a community? Where do we identify as a
So do
community?
you want one in this corridor?
Oh, that's a good
We want one of what?
You know,
A community,
yeah,
a
like a
visible.
visible center. Now, I will say,
Like Canton has.
so there's ways to do that. And we went down this, I'm not saying we shouldn't go down this road. I have to tell you a little history. It's always helpful to get a little history. A couple, maybe 2-3 master plans ago, we used to have areas identified at Zeeb and Jackson called Town Center North and Town Center South. And those were roughly identified as being our town center. And those appeared in a couple, maybe at least 2 master plans, maybe 3. And at about 2 master plans ago, which have been 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, they were removed. And they were removed in part, there was this discussion, we don't have a downtown, we don't have a center, we should have a downtown. And then the conversation turned to, do we need a downtown? We have the city of Dexter in our northwest corner, and we have the city of Ann Arbor east of us. Both of those communities have wonderful downtowns. Do we need to recreate something that essentially is already in our community, but not Scio Township, city of Ann Arbor, city of Dexter, at the time it was village of Dexter. So that, you know, that's something that I threw out there as a history of something, and now I think there are ways to get that identity or that core without necessarily having to create a downtown. A lot of communities, I think, as Pam had mentioned, there have been some unsuccessful attempts at townships trying to create downtowns, you know, and so we want to make sure we don't go down that path. So, you know, there are ways to do this, there are ways to create cores, there are ways to do that, but I will just raise that as something that happened. If you look at
What's a town center?
it was supposed to be the identifiable core of Scio Township. And it was going to be a mixed use, retail, residential center.
Okay.
Yeah, and the one development kind of,
Yeah, Scio Town Center, they even called it Town Center. Scio Town Center, which is next to the car wash, you know, south of Jackson, east side of Jackson.
It has the retail with the apartments on
There's
top.
apartments in,
Oh, yeah,
And then
yeah,
apartments in the
the
back.
resale place.
Yep.
Yeah.
that
Oh.
development met the town center south
see.
area almost to a T.
I see,
So,
okay.
Yeah, but I think you can have, it would be good to maybe have some examples of, does it have to be one, or is it just a strong, core and, some fun mixed use properties, with a lot of multifamily that almost create those hubs within themselves, like you guys have, the co-housing has, they have a strong sense of, with your kind of community center piece and the public spaces that you have. I mean, and that creates an identity. It's not like, oh, but you're not gonna have when you have a rural character, that is also an attribute. You can go bike and feel like you're, in the country. You can go to the river and feel like you're up north,
East Delhi Road, you feel like you're up in Harbor Springs somewhere.
I think the rural aspects of the township are very important, and I think that people who live in those rural communities are very, I don't know, committed to the rural identity. I also think there's a perception that what we're doing on Jackson Road, or what this planning commission is doing, is an attempt to destroy the rural character of the township, which I would disagree. I think that if anything, this effort to try and concentrate development on Jackson Road in these pockets is an effort to preserve the rural nature of the township instead of expand the suburban characteristics of it.
I mean, and I couldn't agree more, and it also bolsters legal arguments against higher density in the rural parts of the township. If you can show that your community is actively allowing development in certain areas, high density, commercial, residential development, and you get challenged in another location that you're trying to maintain as rural, you're in a much better position in court, that you're not just being exclusionary to everybody. It's like, no, we have a spot, and look what we've done in the Jackson Road corridor. And we've done recently, there's been some projects that we could point to bolster that argument.
What would you describe Scio as today?
Becoming too much like Ann Arbor. And that's why I kind of decided I had to come in, because I had to make sure that I spoke. Because I was fighting with myself, I don't want to be like Ann Arbor. How am I going to tell you guys? Because that's not going to help you, is I don't want to be like Ann Arbor. It's like, okay, so what? It's like, okay, go to your marketing, Pam. It's, what is your elevator speech? And I really do believe that we need to develop an elevator speech that talks about all the benefits of Scio, that encompasses everything, and then put those bits and pieces in your Jackson Road corridor that direct you to the river, or direct you to the Heron Rookery, or direct you so that you are incorporating who you are, where the most amount of people are gonna be, and shop and participate, to teach them about the rest of us. So I don't have an answer for you right now. I'm hoping you guys come up with something really cool.
Well, you see, in the meantime, we have a lot of pressure for development.
Yeah, that's.
And we can't stop people from selling their properties
Yeah.
and developers
Oh,
developing.
I get it.
So,
And because I don't worry that we're gonna be coming in Ann Arbor, because Ann Arbor just doesn't have any land, and they're going 12 and 13 stories
Right.
on really small lots, and we've got a lot of land. Ann Arbor also has sewer and water everywhere through and through. We don't. We've got a lot of people, and we've got a lot of people with income. And with that income brings development. Slim Chicken wants to come in and sell his stuff. And the Panera wants us to drive through and do their stuff. And so people want to sell us their stuff, and the only place they can kind of do it and have sewer is on that damn Jackson Road corridor, Pam. So I mean, Scio's like this beautiful on the south, beautiful on the north, with this hellish corridor that we've got to wrangle somehow and develop the best way we can that courses through.
It could be an asset for us instead of us trying to get back home away from it. I mean, it could be, I mean, I've said this before, I'm really hurt that we lost the theater. I went to the bowling alley one time, but these are community activities for us, as well as anybody that wants to come into Scio and use them.
That was town center-esque, because you would go there, you'd go to the movie, you'd go to the
Bowling alley
the
was
bowling
next
alley, you'd
door.
go to the Carsons, you might go to one of those little shops, so that was.
I was at Carlisle's yesterday. What a community asset. People are in there big time.
Yeah,
On
well,
a
so
Wed- on a
session,
Wednesday.
we got homes out, we got, we're,
Yeah.
but how do you develop that
There's demand,
quirky stuff?
these are all examples of spaces. I know that's kind of
But not there.
they're literally the term space, like somewhere where people want to go, a third space would be another way to describe it, right? Our car dealerships, our drive-throughs are not third spaces. These are places you're not going to because you want to be there. They're places you go to because you have to go through there, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
whenever you're
all happy
describing
about
Carlisle-
Slim Chickens. I like the session room.
when
I
you're
think it's
describing
a
Carlisle,
great community asset for eating
And
out
we're
and
losing fresh
dining.
forage, so
we're losing fresh forage.
that's what I
The other
heard.
thing I would say, and then I'll be quiet, is that I see too much rental on Jackson Road of apartments or units. I don't see a lot of units to purchase.
Condos or single
Condos,
owner?
Right, so you've got the place by the Heron Rookery. I think most of those are rentals, like 500 units. I think there are some that you can purchase at the new place on Baker Road. But the place on Liberty is rental, Liberty and Wagner. And then I think the theater, aren't those going to be all rentals?
It's not
So,
even, we don't even know if, what it's gonna be.
so in bringing in developers, I'd like to see more people who are buying, because they're going to be more long-term, more stable than renters, and they could be small. I think a lot of young kids nowadays would prefer a smaller unit that they buy, maybe rent, so they can travel. So I'm not saying they need to be big.
Or some of our older residents move into, and that's a good point, the Ann Arbor, Uptown Ann Arbor, right there at Ann Arbor Slee Road and
Yes.
Oak Valley.
Yes.
That's rental and condos are in
Like
the,
Pittsfield, I think. it
in
was.
Pittsfield, that's condos off of the streets are back there.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that's, you know, a good mixture, although I do have to say statistic wise, until we had, you know, some of the newer developments, we had like almost zero rentals. I mean, if you look at the proportion of them, but it's right, we need a diversity of housing, yeah. Thank you. All right, we, John Reiser said 9:01.
Yeah.
Of course, we started late, but we're good on Jackson Road, right? We've got, the other thing I just want to bring up is, just so the other members of the planning commission who won't be assisting Doug with this, the other thing we need to work on are, you know, updating and creating some of the ordinances that we don't have. And there are two, I think that creating the solar ordinance is going to take more time. But we're talking about EV charging everywhere. You know, it keeps coming up. And so I think, you know, attacking the EV charging ordinance would be good, along with, the solar ordinance, those are the two new ones.
So would that be a separate, like, what are some bullet points of what a solar ordinance would look like or an EV? You have to do it, you can't prohibit it, like,
EV would be it would be included in our parking ordinance, basically.
so if you want a parking lot, you gotta have EV, or if you build a house, you gotta have EV. Or if you
Parking lot.
build a commercial, you gotta have EV.
And you can require them in multifamily. Then it gets into what are the parameters around some of the other PUDs do you require?
We could require at least a level 2.
Do we require them because it's the right thing to do, because it's the future, or because people are going to use them? What if we require them and nobody uses them? Or is that,
People are buying EVs right now. So we're assuming there's gonna be a certain level of stock of EVs on the road. And it feeds into our sustainability plans as well.
And I did, there was a communication, I will include it in, have them upload it in the packet. The Catalyst Communities, that website, if you look at the Catalyst Communities website, it has all sorts of resources, and it's based on, I just got back from the Michigan Sustainability Conference where Eagle was giving an update on the My Healthy Climate Plan. They're really trying to get people to use the resources of the Catalyst Communities, and it has multiple EV ordinances and sort of like, well, how many EV chargers do we need? And, how should you look at that as examples? Plus, in our packet was a link that some of the mobility group from the task force did a little bit of research. Carlisle Wortman has recently written EV ordinances too. It is helping to develop the infrastructure that we need to electrify our transportation system, basically.
Well, we do have what we used to call the zoning ordinance amendment committee, that now that I have more time available, I would be happy to reconvene that group. And that'd be, I think that'd be.
Yep, and so I figured we'll kind of split the planning commission, and a group will go with dealing with the Jackson Road, and the remnants will help develop some of those ordinances. And part of it is looking at bike parking. We had, the last time we looked at bike parking, it's somewhat minimal, but there could be some things added on, especially multifamily, to make sure it's covered, make sure they have things. I don't think we require space for recycling. There are just some really basic ordinance updates that, we can just kind of go through and keep going. It just seemed like the EV charging needed a little bit of research, as the solar,
Yeah, because we're just winging it from project to project.
Right, we are winging it,
So-
and we need some sort of standard.
So what are some bullet points of what a solar ordinance would look like?
Okay.
What are some things it would have or?
Did you see the link that it was in the packet? There is a whole guidance that was written for ordinances. In the link in the agenda, there were two links. One is the research that was done for EVs.
Advisory group thing and SWOT exercise.
No, in the agenda, there are links.
Yeah, but it's just the PC roll call, Jackson Advisory Group, and the SWOT exercise.
Nope, the link for discussion only to
Oh.
ordinance amendment topics and time permits, is in time permitting right now. Yeah, so there are two links, and one is, the bottom link is the planning and zoning guide for solar energy, and there is it's a guide for Michigan local governments. It goes through all of the elements of a solar ordinance. Yep, so,
I didn't see that link in the packet.
sorry,
You emailed it to us.
well, actually, it was also in the packet as a link to. So it was in the packet, and I did, I re-emailed, and what I emailed was the link to the Catalyst Communities, which has even more research and what other communities have done and so forth.
So, but for the benefit of people in the audience and others who haven't studied it as much, does it say you have to have solar, or you can't prohibit solar, or you tell a HOA or a new PUD that you have to allow solar, or like, what are some things that
Okay.
that are in solar ordinances generally?
Okay, there are a couple of things. One has to do with right now, if you have a piece of property, you cannot just put solar on it. It can't be a principal use. All right,
Per Scio's ordinance or per Michigan law, or per, you don't have enough?
Scio's ordinance.
Okay.
Now, what she means by principal use is you can't just have a vacant piece of property without a house. Like if you have a house, that's the principal use, and if you want solar, you just pull a building permit and
Okay,
we issue it. But you have to meet setbacks.
you're talking about solar generation without a structure?
So
To go
right
back onto the
now,
grid, or to go?
so right now, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, if I wanted to put solar on my property, I have to go through DTE, which I don't want to go through. I want to have my own battery backup and do my own thing.
You don't have to
But
go
living
through
in this-
DTE unless you want to connect to the grid. If
I
you
don't want to
connect-
connect to the grid with my
Then-
solar.
Then you don't have to
You
deal
don't
with
have to do
DTE.
that? Okay, I thought I had to.
We get so many zoning permits for solar.
Okay,
Oh, we get, many each week. Rooftop, ground mounted.
So this is looking at, and it's looking at the future. So there is a legislation right now for taking out of township control, I think it's 50 megawatt solar would be regulated by the state. I don't even know how many thousands of acres a 50-watt solar, but anything under that, we don't have any regulation, we don't have any, and so.
But if people are applying for them
well,
and they're
we're
getting
mine
them.
in quick.
Well, no, that's on your house, we're not regulating what's on your house, we're regulating if, let's say a utility wants to come in or a farmer has a section of land that wants to work with a utility
wanna
to
lease their
do
land.
solar, they can't do that
They can't do that?
because we have no provision for that.
Well, whoa, there's no law preventing it, they can do it.
No,
Yeah, if it's not in zoning works, that if it's not specifically listed, it's not permitted.
Oh,
So.
Yeah.
that's
so
how-
we have a little bit of a gap.
I see.
that we
They
need
like
to-
criminal out like you and me. Thou shalt not kill.
And then the other thing is it gets into, if you look at that planning guide, it looks, we have ITC,
Corridor.
a corridor. They're at some point gonna wanna put in batteries. If, and that's, it's been a topic of debate. But anyway, we have a gap in our ordinance that doesn't,
Like.
there's,
At Scio and Wagner?
Well, wherever. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now that a lot of the future of, this solar and wind and things like that.
Power distribution.
You gotta store it somewhere.
Right, power distribution.
Yeah, and so you're putting in these battery stations, I guess for lack of a better word. And they look like railroad cars, like a bunch of, they can be quite large, 10, 15 acres of just
like those shipping
Thanks.
containers.
shipping container. And so, that we have to be prepared for that because those can become kind of obtrusive to neighboring properties. They can be loud. And if they ever catch on fire, they're difficult to.
But aren't they a necessary evil of wind and solar?
Yes, oh yeah.
Yeah, but what we're
We're not
saying
saying
is,
against it, we wanna regulate
we
it.
wanna regulate it.
You can't say, we want solar and wind, but we don't want
Not
you to
here.
store the power.
But
Right.
it's just new, it's a brand new thing, in fact, they had a whole session on it at the MAP conference up in Traverse City that I went to, and it's just, it's something that's facing a lot of communities right now. One of our clients, Township, now very rural farming community, but there's a company out of state that's looking to develop one of these things in Township. And they're very concerned, you know, because if they catch on fire, the fire departments, from what I hear, they just say they're gonna let them burn because they can't put it out.
Yeah.
But wow.
Yeah, so part of it is, yeah, we don't have anything that regulates it, and so we need to really, you know, work through and develop that. And then the same thing, you're right, we're shooting from the hip with the EV charging, we need to figure out a way, so, you know, there are regulations, so if we want to encourage a conditional use person to add that, or someone who's, you know, doing a change of use or something else, you know, we have a kind of a standard that we can go to, so it's.
So one of the things
it's
that we might,
equitable.
yeah, so one of the things that we might want to consider with regard to these battery stations, that sounds a little scary.
Well, yeah, part of it is to
So-
dig into this.
I
yeah.
wanna get going pretty soon, and I don't mind opening up, there's not many people here, if there's someone who hasn't spoken yet, I don't mind taking a few minutes from members of the public if they wanna do that, but so, what's the best way to attack, EV charging, to attack solar and battery power energy, how do we do that?
So what we're gonna do is split the planning commission, and the group that isn't working on the Jackson Road
Okay.
will work with Doug on the EV charging and the solar, kind of make sure we get it in our heads, the
Okay.
research,
So
and
everybody's got
Yeah.
homework to do,
Yeah.
if you're not here, you're there, make your voice. Okay, I would move that, before we adjourn, that we open it up to members of the public if they want to speak for up to 2 minutes and 59 seconds.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right.
All right, we do have one hand raised, and that is Rob Pattinson. Mr. Pattinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. Thank you for tonight's meeting. This is a great first step in going more towards planning than being reactionary to individual developments. So well done tonight. Please continue this process. One thing Dougie said earlier tonight that was a little bit frightening was he said, if you keep the group small enough, you don't have to post it as a public meeting. It doesn't have to be documented. And the last thing on earth Scio Township needs is for important meetings that will be changing how we zone and how we do planning and those sorts of things, is for those meetings to happen in secret. That would be a disaster. And so please, please, please make all of these meetings public, put an agenda packet out with them, announce them, put them on the schedule so that the public can attend. Your example of the first meeting of talking about where we are now was a perfect example of how important that is, because that will be educational for residents as well as for the committee members. And then you talked about the J-Rod subcommittee dealing with sort of skirting around 2D public benefit. And I would like to suggest two things, or ask a question and make a suggestion. The suggestion is, please have another PUD public benefit meeting with the board and with the DDA. And let's finally get that public benefit algorithm, policy, whatever you want to call it, so that residents and developers alike and the board and the planning commission and the DDA all know what the boundaries of that public benefit are, especially now related to our fire SAD, so that we get more support for our infrastructure and the fire department. And then the question is, will this J-Rod subcommittee, will it be touching on that particular subject to help
Subcommittee.
explain what that process would be?
There is no J-Rob subcommittee,
He's talking about the one we were just talking
The
about.
advisory
the
group.
advisory group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rob. A couple things. I think there has been discussion about, the, public benefit piece and what is, sort of the responsibility of the trustees and the township attorney versus the planning commission. And also that we're, negotiating it too late, in the process. So I think there's some discussion about, the planning commission public benefit is, what is the public benefit within the development itself, the connectivity, the planning basics of public benefit, and then the monetary sort of public benefit is more in the realm of the trustees. And so the discussions, I think people are moving, trying to resolve, one, how do you make it so a developer doesn't get to, like, you're almost approving my plan and then, feeling
Hold them
like you're,
hostage.
yeah, exacting more at the last minute as opposed to making it a part of the preliminary PUD. So there have been some discussions, and I think everybody at this table thinks that it does need to be clarified, when those discussions take place and who is a part of those discussions. So thank you. That is something that is, but the advisory committee won't be dealing with that, except when it becomes in the language of, density bonuses and incentives and so forth. Those are planning commission levers and ordinance levers to get the type of development you want.
Now, I think what needs to happen with regard to that particular is we need to define what are the community benefits with the board and say, this is what we're, and then tag them, as Mr. Luan has pointed out, tag them to the types of developments, because they,
They have to be related in some
yeah,
way.
related to the development, and I don't know why we can't just make that decision.
Are there any plans for making that meeting happen?
Okay, thank you very much. And hey, I forgot to tell you, it's so good to have you back. And I hope you're recovering and doing well and staying healthy.
I would just say about the advisory committee, it's not a secret, because if it were a secret, we wouldn't be having this meeting talking about it and sharing it with the public. It's not intended to be a secret. It's intended to get things done. And we have to have a way to have subcommittees to get things done, because we still have to carry out the business, the regular business of the planning commission. So it's not intended to be secretive at all, but to rather, and not only that, everything comes back to the commission. None of these advisory groups will be making any decisions. The planning commission will be the final say.
And that's a fair point, Commissioner Moore. The problem is that in terms of credibility and transparency and honesty and integrity, those have been major issues for particularly the board, not necessarily the planning commission. And so given the appearance of a subcommittee meeting in secret, that should be avoided at all possible costs.
But you see, you have to give us, I appreciate that, and I've gotten that loud and clear. In watching board meetings and, some of the comments that come to us. But we have to be given, you want us to do the job, you have to give us the room to do the job. Don't do the job, get rid of us, get rid of me. We gotta be, but we can't do everything in our PC meetings, so we have to be able to do the job that you got us here to do. So that's just a tool that we use to have committees. And, if we're not doing the job, hold us accountable.
Anyway, thank you.
To make those public meetings, and we'll put them on Zoom and we can post them to the YouTube channel and residents can be informed. But thank you very much for the extra time tonight. Well done tonight, gang. That was very well done.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Rob. Nice to hear your voice. Move to adjourn.
Is there support?
Second.
okay, supported by Commissioner Human.
Aye.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at, what's,
Luan, thank you.
9:16. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
I'd say nice to see you again.